Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to our project. We're going to make this scene look a lot better using HDRP. Without further ado, we're just going to jump into it and make it look really cool. So the first thing that I want to do is come up here, and we're going to create, under rendering, we're going to do scene settings. So I'm going to place this under lighting, and immediately you can see it changes our scene pretty dramatically. So there's a lot that is under this whole scene settings. If we take a look, we created a scene settings profile that gets saved into our scenes folder. And we're going to make sure that this is global. Like I said before, you could set different volumes. We may look at that later on, but for now we're going to go ahead and leave the HD shadow settings by default. The visual environment, we are going to, we'll leave that at exponential for now. The sky type, though, we're going to change that to HDR sky. So we don't need this procedural sky anymore. So we're going to go ahead and remove it. And in its place, we're going to add the HDRI sky. So this guy here is wanting us to add a cube map. So we're going to add sky and then this night sky right here. Okay, so let's see what that looks like in our scene. So there it is, the night sky. We're going to change the exposure. I'm going to change this to more of a nighttime sky, so something like that. And just I'm just kind of fiddling with this, really. So maybe something along the lines of that. If I jump in play mode, and I'm using the first-person character controller, by the way. So if I jump into play mode and I look up, yep. That definitely looks really nice. So we'll go ahead and stop that. And let's see. We can change the rotation if we want, but I think it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and see what else we can add into here. So let's go ahead and add some screen space reflection. Okay, so this is one that took me a while to figure out, because as soon as you add it, nothing really changes at all. You can see that our ground here, if we kind of go down to it, let's look at the material of it. We're just going to take the normal map down and just make it as smooth as possible, just so we can kind of see our reflections. Okay, so right now, this is just the cube map from the reflection sphere. So what I mean by that is, if we come into the reflection probe and we look, this is what we're capturing, and we bake this, and this is kind of what we see. So you can see this changed because the actual HDRI changed to a night sky. Okay, so let's make sure that this is on the pavement. It looks like it is. Yep. Okay, so that's good. And you can just click this little button and grab the different parts of the volume there. What's so great about this is that we can blend between the two, and we can tell it what to actually capture. So there's so many settings in here that helps a lot. And of course we have like this intensity multiplier, so you can really dial this in exactly how you want it. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. Let's go ahead and grab that material again. I just want to look at this and see exactly what's in here. So this ambient occlusion remapping, we're actually probably going to get rid of this. Let's see. Yeah, we are going to put that there. We already have a mask map. So actually this is doing us some good, because this has a mask map with it. You can see that we have receives screen space reflection is turned on. So what's the deal? Well, if you're ever in doubt, you should probably go to the highest level and check and make sure. And yep, we do not have screen space reflections turned on. And as soon as we do that, still we do not see a change. So again, we can go into our scene settings, and if we tick this on back and forth, you can see we should be seeing this in the reflection, but we're not. We're still just seeing the background. We still don't have screen space reflections, so why would that be? Well, let's go ahead. I know the answer, but I'm going to just kind of lead you through. Anyways, let's pretend like I don't know the answer. And you're probably saying, Brandon, it's in the post-processing stack. Oh, okay. Yeah, post-processing stack. Okay, we'll do that. We'll go to our main camera, and we'll type post-processing layer. And we're going to set this to post-processing. And if you don't have a layer called post-processing, what you can do is just say add layer and then type it here. We're going to create a empty object. We'll reset the transforms. We're going to put this into our lighting. We're going to call this post-processing. So this is an actual volume. So we're going to make it global. And then we're going to create a new profile. And that, again, saves into our scenes. And you could name this alleyway if you wanted to, but we'll just go ahead and leave it. And we're going to add ambient occlusion, auto exposure, bloom. We're going to add it all. Chromatic aberration, color grading. We're going to add some grain. We'll do motion blur. We'll do vignette. And then, last but not least, screen space reflections. Womp. Okay, so it says this effect doesn't work with the scriptable render pipelines yet. Well, I don't really know why this is here. I have a hunch that this is still here for backwards compatibility, so if you wanted to use the Unity built-in renderer, you could. Well, so if it's not in the post-processing stack, where does the screen space reflections get drawn in the scriptable render pipelines? Well, it's actually in the lighting. So if you come down to the lighting settings, you have to enable it here. So that pass actually happens during the lighting pass. And then you can see that this absolutely looks gorgeous now. So we get this really cool look on our street. So let's go ahead and make sure that this is set back to something that we want it. We'll put the remap back so we can get these really cool looking puddles on our road. And we're going to break this up later with some decals so you can get some larger puddles pooling. And decals really help you break up the repetition that would be shown in your game. So yeah, we can use, I love this remapping here because then you can kind of, figure out how wet do you want the road to really look. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some more post-processing stuff. So we'll turn on our ambient occlusion. Oh, and for some reason our post-processing isn't working. Well, what we have to do now is set this to post-processing, and then you can see. And the reason being, on our main camera, we say that the layer is post-processing, so we have to set it there. While we're at it, let's go ahead and we'll add some temporal anti-aliasing, and we'll go ahead and turn that off. Turn off the fog, go back to post-processing, make sure that this is something that we want. Auto exposure we'll leave on. Let's play with some bloom. We actually need to turn on auto exposure. I don't really like auto exposure in games, but it does work out well when you have outdoor, going from outdoor to interior. Just because everything inside of this engine is rendered physically, so if you have a really bright, sunny outside area, it should look really nice going back and forth. Let's go ahead and set this to something like 0.5, and we'll kind of make that diffusion a little bit higher. We'll change the anamorphic ratio to kind of give it an anamorphic looking flare. We could kind of give it a flare texture if we wanted to on our dirtiness, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that off. Okay, so a little bit of chromatic aberration. This is kind of like a cheaper lensing effect that happens, kind of makes the RGB RG and B channels split as the light goes through the refraction of the lens. That's usually happening with cheaper lenses. Film lenses don't do that, but it's kind of a cool effect to have in a game. Let's go ahead and change some stuff here. And I'm going to kind of get this looking similar to how we had it in the other scene when it was the standard built-in renderer. Change this to aces. Change the temperature a little bit to the cool side. And we'll kind of mess with some contrast here. And you can see the color grading here is absolutely fantastic. We'll do just a little bit of grain. We'll turn on motion blur. And we'll get a vignette. And kind of darken those edges just a little bit. Okay, so now you can see, while we're in play mode here, that our signs look really, really good. I'm going to kind of make it a little more obnoxious. I'm going to I like how this is nice and glowing. I want these to kind of glow a little bit more. So I'm going to do that really quick. Okay, so I wanted this hotel to be brighter. But you can see it completely made all the windows brighter. So I'm going to try to see what we can do with that. So I have another material in here that I can just throw on. So these are going to make sure that these are off. And I'm actually going to duplicate this material and make this one not as bright. Okay, so I went through and made that look a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this working light. Instead, what I'll do is I'll just take the other point light that I have, and when I kind of move that into the general coordinates of the other light and just kind of place it in here, and then let's go ahead and kind of move it up. It's kind of like a street lamp. And again, I'm using Pro Grids to make sure that I'm kind of snapping everything relative to each other. Okay, maybe something like that, and we need it to kind of reach the street. And let's set this to like 3200. And we'll crank up the intensity. And this is not going to be real time, it's going to be baked. Same with this light, we're not going to make it real time, it will be baked as well. The only real time light we're going to have is the actual directional light, which is kind of acting like a moon in a way, but it's kind of providing a little bit more definition. So let's go ahead and add one more. We're going to add this micro shadowing, which is new, and you can see that adds just a little bit here onto some of these guys. So micro shadowing is basically the directional shadow based on ambient occlusion and normal texture, and that is actually from Naughty Dog's tech that was used in Uncharted 4. Contact shadowing is something we would use if we had real-time tessellation. So maybe for like grounds and pebbles and things like that, we would actually use contact shadowing for those crevices. Some of the other stuff I'd like to do is kind of adjust this exponential fog. So let's have a little bit of a play with this. As you can see, as I'm bringing that fog distance down, it's making everything darker. So let's go ahead and leave that. We'll take the fog height up. We'll use a constant color. So let's do a bluish color. You know, it might be nice if we add something color from the scene. So what we could do is, I just want to go ahead and take this density down just for a second. We'll color pick some type of blue and bring it back up, and then we'll bring up the vibrance of it. So maybe something like that. So we have some fog height, the fog attenuation. So we kind of would like something maybe like this, and this is something we'll have to tweak as we're walking around. Let's go ahead and just do that now. So we'll save. Okay, so let's walk up the street a little bit. You can see it helps a lot in the distance. So some of those buildings aren't quite getting the fog. You know, you can see here it's really, really dark. So it doesn't really look like there's an atmosphere per se. Actually, that building is just very tall. So let's see if we can... Let's increase that number. So the higher this number is, the more likely we're not going to see it in our alleyway. And you can see in the distance that helps it a little bit, just to kind of really push it back far into the background. We can take the intensity, or the density, excuse me. We'll take the density down. Okay, so the last thing we'll do is we'll make sure that we bake our scene. So we'll go over to lighting, and we're going to change this to GPU. We'll save. I don't want to do any ambient occlusion. We'll do directional. We don't need real-time global illumination right now. You can see the difference there, ticking it on and off. We'll talk more about real-time global illumination very soon. Okay, so I went back and made sure everything was set to baked in the emission, and I forgot that we actually had this glass here. So for our phone booth, what we can do is you know, make this look really nice with some different effects. So let's kind of get in. We'll look through the glass. We're going to change this to box, and we'll adjust the index of refraction to something like glass. And then what we can do is I'm going to add a reflection probe inside of there. So we'll go to lighting. We'll add a reflection probe. All right, that's definitely a lot better. And you know, some of these settings that I still have in here are a bit overkill, I'll admit, but it just looks great. Okay, so let's talk about anti-aliasing real quick. So right now I have all of this turned up and I don't have the sharpness. So I'm trying to smooth everything as much as possible. But this material here in the distance is kind of glinting and causing some artifacts. So what we can do is, well, let me go ahead and show you the effect. So if we walk back to the end of the alleyway, see how that in the background kind of dances and jitters a lot? What we can do is actually in the shader try to alleviate some of that stuff. We can do enable geometric specular anti-aliasing. So we'll turn that on, and we'll adjust the threshold. So we'll kind of look off in the distance there and see what we can do. You can see that smoothed it out probably a little too much, but you know, I'll leave you guys to kind of mess with those settings in your project, but you can see that that helps a lot and alleviates a lot of different kind of flickering. So if you have a material, every lit shader has the capabilities to do that. It's the geometric anti-aliasing. And you can see on our street we get a little bit of a shimmering kind of effect as we go up and down. So let's kind of fix that a little bit. So the main culprit here is going to be the normal map. So we'll just take the normal a little bit down, and we'll adjust the smoothness a little bit because those puddles were getting little bit too large, and then we'll do some specular anti-aliasing on this as well. So if we get close here, we'll kind of adjust the threshold, and you can see that helps a lot. But what we'll do is add decals in the street to break up some of this texture repetition. But there's one more thing left to do, and that's to bake the lighting. So we go ahead and save, and then I'm going to use the progressive GPU light mapper. So we never actually did this, but we're going to do it right now. Alright, so that will do it. So that's how you take a project from the Unity standard built-in renderer and bring it into HD render pipeline and create some amazing visuals with it. I'm going to do a direct comparison so that you guys can see in this video the difference between the two. HDRP definitely has a lot of features for, of course, shading, using shader graph. And we also have great abilities for lighting quality. So we have higher lighting quality, and I think that's what's going to get us further to that higher end offline render look. So thanks a lot for taking a look at this project with me. I'm actually going to use this project to describe some other things. Like I said, decals. We'll take a look at the visual effects graph, doing some particle stuff, maybe with rain with visual effects graph and some smoke in this alleyway. I also want to take a look at the layered lit shaders with triplanar mapping, and also doing some real-time tessellation. So there's a lot to cover, there's a lot to look at, there's a lot of features. So this is great. It's nearing the end of preview, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I can't wait till this actually becomes a fully feature released renderer inside of Unity. It's very exciting. So thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you in the next one.